I came back here to open this door because that one was open, but not this. And I was like, no, they should be open.
It should be. Let's try it. We'll get there. I mean, truly, when people come in, just
Yeah,
to hear
yeah,
that, like,
that
that's
was
why the whole
amazing.
point, right?
Yeah,
I'm working on it. There's always
yeah. Yeah. good afternoon, and welcome to Central Presbyterian Church. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm wearing a wireless microphone. I feel like a pastor, but I'm not. And I'm running sound, so you could just do up or down if it's either too loud or too quiet. I am Charity Wicks. I'm the Director of Music here at Central Presbyterian Church, and I'm so glad that you have come back or have come here today to hear this really amazing instrument and to learn more about the history of organs and this instrument in particular. If you got a program at the door, you'll see a young Charity Wicks at an organ. I think I had just played a wedding or something. But a little bit about my history with the organ. So I'm a pianist first. I've played the piano since I was about 3, but I grew up in a tiny, tiny little town in northern Minnesota that had 400 people. Still maybe has even 300 now. And there was nobody who could play the church organ. And so I started playing the organ at church when I was 10. And I took lessons with a nun for a little while. But yes, I was the one who would go around the whole 100-mile radius area and play weddings. It was a great experience. But I love the instrument. I studied the organ for 1 semester in my undergrad because piano was my major, but we had to have a minor instrument. And I was like, oh, I'll do organ. And I was so bored because the organ teacher didn't really teach me anything. So then I picked up the cello, which is very hard, as you know, William. But I've always loved the organ, and I've always played it. And it's such an incredible instrument that is basically an entire orchestra in one box that I'll teach you a little bit more about today. So I'm going to talk, I'm going to play, I'm going to talk some more, and sort of go back and forth like that. And I really suggest that while I'm playing, you get up and you move around the space, and you hear the organ from different parts of the sanctuary. There are some times where I'm only going to be playing the front, which is called the chancel, and there's sometimes I'm only going to be playing the back, the gallery. So please do not feel bad. It's not disruptive whatsoever. I urge you to wander around and sit in different places throughout the concert and hear what it sounds like from that side, from the very back, and what that experience is like. All right, so let's begin. Pipe organ. So this is a pipe organ, and the origins of the pipe organ are back in the 3rd century BC. And the very first organ was basically a really crude instrument that was a hydraulis, a water-powered organ. That developed into a little bit more of the air-powered organ that we have now. But this instrument spread throughout the Roman Empire, where it was used in public entertainment and ceremonies. And they were often massive instruments and very crude, and multiple people would have to push the bellows or push the water through things to get sound to flow. So it was a very, very big thing. The pipe organ, as we know, it became associated with the Christian church gradually over several centuries as Christianity spread throughout Europe. Although early Christians were cautious about using instruments in worship because of their connection to Roman entertainment and pagan ceremonies, attitudes began to change by the middle to early Middle Ages. By around the 7th and 8th centuries, organs were being introduced into large churches and monasteries because their powerful sound could actually support congregational singing and fill these big, huge cathedrals that were being built. The instrument also symbolized grandeur and spiritual authority, making it well suited to religious ceremonies. As church architecture grew more elaborate during the Gothic period, organs became larger and more complex. Who all can have a vision of German organs or European organs that sort of take up the whole space? I was just in Paris, and I went to Notre Dame, and I saw that organ, and I also went to Saint-Sulpice and saw that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But just seeing these massive facades of all the pipes is really incredible. And so that was tied to how church architecture grew and really was trying to fill space. By the Renaissance and Baroque periods, organ builders had developed intricate systems of pipes, keyboards, pedals, and it allowed composers such as Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, to create highly expressive and technically demanding music, establishing this instrument as both a liturgical instrument used for church services, but also a major vehicle for grand musical expression. Today, the pipe organ is lovingly called the king of the instruments, and that's because of its size, its complexity, its sonic range, and it remains celebrated for its important role in both religious and concert traditions, capable of imitating an entire orchestra and producing monumental sound all on its own. So how does it work? A pipe organ works by forcing air through pipes, which you see a lot on this facade. If you turn back, there's also some back there. There are also many pipes hidden behind those and behind this wall. There's a whole room that you can go to if you go through the school and you go upstairs, and it's a tiny little box. Organ tuners have to be very small people because they have to crawl, and an organ is tuned by like lifting the pipe and turning it a little bit, and they have to be able to crawl into these crazy tiny spaces to do that work. But yes, that's the whole swell box back there. So air is forced through the pipes, which produce sound. And as I said before, there's the keyboards, which we call manuals. This organ has 3 manuals: pedals for the feet, system of pipes, and bellows or electric blowers that supply air. We have, can you see this tube right here? That's sort of the connection for all of the electronic systems, which then tell the blower which pipe to open up as I press a key. So let's see. A lot happens in here, and we just had this organ upgraded, right? It has a brand new brain as of last fall. And the electronic system inside here, like this could all come apart, and the circuits are wild. But I press one key, and because I have this stop pulled, it's like, oh, I'm going to play the 4-foot flute. But it has to be an F 4-foot flute. And so the dialogue that the instrument has with all of the electronics just to get air to go through that one single pipe is pretty impressive. Each pipe is designed to create a specific pitch, and the length and shape of the pipe determine the sound it produces. So the longer pipes are obviously going to be the big lower notes, and the smaller the pipes get, you can also come up here afterwards, but there are teeny tiny pipes that are maybe like an inch long total, and those are the very, very highest notes on the organ. Oops, sorry. Not pleasant on its own, right? But when it's all coupled together and mixed, but you have to have a tiny pipe. So every sound, which we're going to look at this sheet that I handed out, has a pipe to go with every single note. So it's a lot. An organ rank. So if you access this sheet that I put into your program, this is the specifics, the specs of this organ and what it is made up of. So you can sort of glance at that, and I'm going to give you some more specifics about it. But as I talk about this little bit, take a look at that. An organ rank is a complete set of pipes. So if you ever hear organists talking, we're going to sound really nerdy, and we talk about how many ranks does your organ have. That means how many sets of sounds do you have. So this one 8-foot flute, that's one rank. And so this organ, if you look at the back, we have 63 ranks, which is very impressive, very, very impressive. And so the rank is the complete set of pipes that all share the same tone quality, and they're arranged in the order lowest to highest. So that's why also the shape is so beautiful to look at, but that's because the lower ones, the low notes, are big, and then it just gradually gets smaller as you go. So it looks good, but it also is sort of how it works. Ranks are controlled by stops. And that's all of these things that are on, this part is called the organ console, and this is what we play, and these are called stops. And every sound that we have on the organ has a knob that you pull out. We're going to play something. That's something for the back. So this whole section right here controls back there. This section controls up here. So you have to sort of, anytime an organist goes to an organ they haven't played before, they need a fair amount of time to get acquainted with the organ, what sounds they have, what stops they have, how it's all set up. But that's what that does. And then can everybody see there's like buttons under here? There's the keyboard, but then there's buttons under here. And so what you can do, because we don't have enough hands to pull out all these things when we want to play something, we come beforehand, and you'll see when I start to play, we set our orchestration, it's called, and then we save it to a memory. And so then we just have to push one button, and all those stops come on. It's so smart. And there would actually really be no other way to do it, unless you had all those other people with you pulling them out and doing it manually. But that's why we have this sort of system in place. And then we have also over here, there's a couple buttons, and we have multiple levels of memory presets. So I probably have 60 different levels that I can set 10 different presets on. So you can do a lot. It's kind of endless. Let's see. So let me just give you a couple examples from this sheet, and then I'm going to play something for you. Also going to take off my shoes because I play without my shoes. So this Chance organ, it's the company who made it. They're based in Ohio, and this organ was installed in 1993. It has 63 ranks and 3,625 pipes. But we've also added a couple things. Central Church has had a really incredible supporter of the organ, Dr. Christopher Warren, who passed approaching 2 years ago. And he has funded many upgrades and extra special things that we didn't have before. And one of them is this electronic system that's up in the back. I'm going to play it for you. Ready? So it's a pedal. We don't have those big pipes. We do have big pipes back there, but that's an electronic system. So there's huge speakers up on that balcony, which we don't have access to except for a tiny ladder through a tiny hole. So we have all of this stuff, but then we also have these new additions if you look at the back. And those are the really fun things that you don't use very often, but when you need to, they're very, very special. So types of stops. We have principal. Principal is basically like the core sound of an organ. It's not a string, it's not a flute, and this is a principal. It sounds kind of stringy, it sounds kind of fluty. It's not really either, and it's kind of both. And so that's basically the core of an organ sound. Then we have some flute stops, which are obviously going to sound very much like a flute. Right? We have some reed stops, which are going to be like buzzing, brass-like sounds. That's an oboe. That's a trumpet. We have a couple of those. We have something called a posana. That's like a trombone. We do have some strings. And we even have a tremolo stop that makes basically the wind like do this, and it sounds as though the strings are playing tremolo, or flute is playing tremolo, which is actually a natural vibrato, right? Then we have something called mixtures, which basically is multiple pipes per note. So I'm going to play one note, but it's going to sound sometimes 4 to 5 different pipes that are within the harmonic system of a note. That's another lecture for another day, but I only played this note, ba, but you can also kind of hear ba. You hear multiple notes by only playing one. And so those just add levels of harmonics to the sound. So yeah, you're going to hear basically every stop that this organ has throughout the concert. So that's that. You can keep this handy. Also, if you look at it, you'll see that we have, most of them are in other languages, German, but also French. And the thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later is American organs are sort of an amalgamation of European sounds and organs. So we have some French qualities, we have some German qualities, we have some Italian qualities, and actually that's what I'm going to go to next. So I'm going to take us through some countries through the time period, like in chronological order. We're going to go to Italy first. In the Renaissance and Baroque periods, when the organ was really becoming a thing, Italy mostly used smaller organs, focusing on solo voices and bright principals, which is that like foundational organ sound, offering clarity and vocal style. This organ is much larger and much more symphonic than the kinds of Italian instruments that the composer of the first piece, Frescobaldi, would have known. So the goal when you're playing Italian music from the Baroque and Renaissance is to simplify. You don't want to play something like this full out like a French romantic piece. And so I'm going to take you on this journey. So the first piece I'm going to play is by Italian composer and organist Girolamo Frescobaldi. And this is just a simple little canzone that would be after the epistle reading. And again, please feel free to get up and walk around as we play. Some of these first pieces I'm playing are short, and then some will get a little bit longer. So pretty simple. You heard for the very last movement that I did, I added a mixture. So I added this one that plays multiple pipes for the one sound. So that was Italy. Now we're going to go to Spain. Spain was all about drama, and they used horizontal reeds for dramatic effects, and luckily we have that. We have those pipes in the back. If everybody turns around and looks out at those horizontal trumpet pipes that are sticking straight out, we are very fortunate to have them, and they're not used very often, but in a moment where we want heraldry and grandness, they're very, very exciting. So this piece, this short little excerpt that I'm going to play by Juan Cabanilles, he was the organist at Valencia Cathedral, and he wrote this in about 1695. And it's called Tiento de Batalla, which is a battle piece. And then he wrote many of these, and I'm going to play just an excerpt from it so you can hear sort of that explosive sound that a Spanish organ would have used. Fun, right? Yeah. So that's really fun, but you have to use it sparingly because it can certainly get overwhelming, right? Okay, I'm going to pull this just a little bit closer. So now we're going to move to France. Organs became orchestral in color in France, using distinct reed stops for drama. So a plain jeu, which is French for full chorus, is a type of mixture stop used in classical French pipe organs. And so it's a mixture, which means if you play one note, it plays multiple, right? So here's that sound. It was designed principally to strengthen the organ's principal chorus, which again, the principal is sort of the like foundation sound. And if you add the plain jeu, it just fills it out a little bit because it's giving you those harmonics, the notes of the harmonic series, as well as that principal note. It's especially effective in grand, majestic music. It became an important feature of the French classical organ building during the 17th and 18th centuries and was commonly used in liturgical music and ceremonial passages, which is actually what I'm about to play for you. The piece I'm going to play is by French composer François Couperin, and he wrote organ music that made dramatic use of this stop. The sound is often described as sparkling, powerful, richly textured, which helps the organ to project clearly through large church spaces. So these two short little pieces that I'm going to play were basically mass music, and they were written for convents, so monastic services. So you hear the difference in the places of origin of this music and how differently they used organs, how differently they built organs. They're all basically the same instrument, but they really had localized methods. Now that brings us to Germany. So the epitome of Baroque clarity and structure was German organ music. J.S. Bach, right? If you think of Bach, he was an organist. He wrote new music for the organ every single week. Every service, there was a new vocal cantata, a choir cantata, organ music, all this sorts of stuff. And it really is the peak of this style of organ building and organ music. It highlights bright principal stops and mixtures, creating clear voicing ideal for polyphony. Polyphony, poly meaning many, and phony meaning voice, many voices going at once. So if you listen to Bach, you hear the sopranos doing this, singing these words, the altos doing something totally different, singing other words, the tenors also doing something else, and it creates this texture and this fabric that's absolutely incredible, but it's all these voices going at once. So organ music is often the same, and so there needed to be clarity so it didn't just become total mush, right? And so that's what the German organ builders did when they developed their organs at this time. They structured their organs based on a principle called the Werkprinzip, division principle, a concept that developed most fully in Northern Europe, especially in Germany and the Netherlands during the Renaissance and Baroque periods. In a Werkprinzip organ, the instrument is divided into separate tonal and physical sections called works. So if you look back and you look at the pipe sets that we can see, and you know how there's sort of the beams between the vertical beams that go up and down, it's like that, but it's even more so. Each stop, each sound was basically encapsulated in one section. So if you go home and you Google German Baroque organs, you'll see there's this set of stop in this column, there's this whole set of sounds in this column, and the idea was to isolate as much as they could this sound. So that this sound was here, this sound was here, this sound was here. Ours is a little bit more incorporated all together, but yet you can also see that's one division, that's another division. So it's not the same principle, but it's the same idea. And for the German Baroque clarity, that was very, very important. So you can go home and you can Google those images and you'll see. I could picture it without even knowing a specific organ. I'm going to play a piece by Johann Pachelbel. Everybody probably knows Pachelbel's Canon in D. It's at most every wedding. But what I'm going to play is actually a toccata in C major. It's a relatively compact but stylistically important organ work that reflects the South German Baroque tradition of clarity, measured rhetoric, and contrapuntal craftsmanship rather than dramatic virtuosity that the Northern German toccata is a little bit later demonstrated, like Buxtehude and Bach. So I'm going to play a Pachelbel toccata, and then I'm going to play a Bach toccata, and you're going to hear the difference. The South German style was much more sort of measured and kept it within a box, and then the Bach piece, I'll talk about it in a minute. This piece is often played on transparent principal chorus registration. So basically, we're just going to keep the principals as the basis of this and not give a lot of extra. And this is Pachelbel. And it's a really cute little piece. makes it pretty simple, right? It seems very clear and very simple, although organists do like to write lots of notes. There are always many notes. Now we're going to move on to Bach. So I'm going to play a part of the Toccata in D minor, which is probably one of the most recognizable organ works ever written, but it's also one of the most debated. People aren't actually super clear if Bach wrote it. When he wrote it, there's not really a date to ascribe to it, and it doesn't necessarily fit in line with a lot of the other stuff that he was writing at the time. But for today, we're going to say that Bach wrote it, and it is one of his most favorite. It is dramatic, it's theatrical, it's structured very differently from what I just played, that architectural style of the South Germans. So the part I'm going to play for you is the opening section, the toccata, which toccare means to touch. And you'll see why, there's lots of notes again. And it's very improvisatory. Then it goes into a fugue, which I'm not going to go into because of time's sake, and then there's another toccata-like coda at the end. So you'll see that this opening toccata section has rapid scalar flourishes, diminished 7 chords, which are very dramatic, big pauses. Our space isn't going to reverberate for 15 seconds like some of the stone cathedrals would, but there are big pauses in the music that allow for that reverberation to happen and then die before then going on to the next section. So it's very dramatic. This is Bach. Thank you. Who recognizes that from any scary movie ever, right? But it's very, very dramatic. So now we're going to leave that Renaissance Baroque period and we're going to go to the Romantic period a little bit later, and we're going to go back to France. Charles Marie Widor was a French organist, and he was actually the organist at Saint-Sulpice in Paris, which I went to 3 weeks ago and heard an organ recital there, and it was absolutely incredible. So he was an organist there for 63 years. What a tenure. And he was followed by Marcel Dupré, who was also an incredible composer and organist, and he was there for about 40 years. So between the two of them, they covered 100 years. And then there was another fellow, another gentleman organist who was there for probably another like 35 years, and he was the one I got to hear play the organ recital that I went to. He is now retired, but he comes back and does things. So, and I saw him afterwards. We took a picture. I said, I'm in New Jersey as an organist. He's like, I know where that is. Because he held a position in Washington, D.C. for 2 years. So it was very, very sweet. But Widor, I got to hear the organ that Widor wrote, the Toccata in C major 4, which was really, really incredible. So this is a very special piece, and you probably all know it because I play it every Easter, and a lot of church organists play it as the postlude for every Easter service. This toccata, again, toccare, meaning to touch. That's what a lot of these pieces are. They exploit the features of this French symphonic organ tradition, where the instrument is really treated like an orchestra, more so than any other. They're large instruments. They have powerful foundation stops, rich reed choruses. They have trumpet, bombard, clarion. They have expressive swell boxes and orchestral style registration changes. So these toccatas, this toccata that I'm going to play is really about soaring texture, energy, and color, and not so much about architecture. It's kind of a wash of sound, a wash of harmony. And not about clear lines or anything like that. But this really is the peak of the French Romantic organ style, where the organ is no longer just a contrapuntal instrument, but it's really a symphonic sound machine. So here is an excerpt from Widor's Toccata, which is actually the last movement of an organ symphony. And I normally have a page turner for this when I play this on Easter. And so I don't, but we're going to play a game and see if you notice. Unless my music falls off, then yes, you'll notice. This would be a good one to walk around, too. that's one that we tend to, the phrase, pull out all the stops, pull out all the stops. That's actually where it comes from. And that's a really fun one. Now, here is another French romantic piece. It's another toccata, but this one is a little more subdued. I mean, it's still really exciting and fun. And this is written by Théodore Dubois. And it's a bit more elegant and controlled than some of that, like the Widor explosive toccatas that you just heard. Thank you. So that one, they're so fun. That one's really fun. Okay, I'm going to take some of these papers out because those are done. Now, what we haven't talked about is England. England, unlike the French Romantics, English organ music from the Romantic period is less about brilliance and counterpoint and more about blended orchestral sound using swell boxes and warm principles. English organs, especially the 19th and early 20th century cathedral instruments, are designed for broad foundation tone, expressiveness, rich but blended reeds, not edgy and sort of like really front forward of the French classical reeds, and super smooth legato phrasing. It's very akin to grand hymn-like textures, slow harmonic rhythm, and orchestral blending, rather than that sharp contrapuntal bite. So I'm going to play something for you by Charles Villers Stanford, who was an English composer, and this is a movement called The Angel's Song. This is a palate cleanser, we'll call it. Thank you. Much simpler, right? Okay, so now this brings us to the United States. And much like how the United States was built and the beautiful country that it is, American organs are, like I said earlier, sort of a melting pot of the organs from Europe and what these organs are descendants of. We have different shapes, sizes, colors, tones. It's all sort of combined into these organs because we have all of that earlier time before us that we can pull from, or organ builders can pull from. So this organ itself, I mentioned, was built and installed in 1993 and it was built by the Shantz Organ Company out of Oroville, Ohio. I actually took some of these pipes a few years back they were starting to lean because they have like little feet that are set in these holes, and the metal was starting to bend. So I brought some and got them fixed, and there might be one or two more that I see. I might have to make another trip to the organ company. But these American-built organs are typically designed in an eclectic American style with strong, clear principal chorus, which is very suitable for congregational hymn singing. They also have some French color and romantic English warmth. So they really tried to get as much as they could into these. And every organ is different, so sometimes there's even more ranks and even more sounds and stops. This organ in particular prioritizes a well-developed, bright, and articulate principal chorus with voicings that emphasize clarity for polyphonic music like Bach, while maintaining enough breadth for the Romantic literature. We are very, very, very fortunate to have this organ, and especially because we have this split organ, which is what we call this, when there is some part of the organ up front and some in the back. We have the swell and the grate, which is what we have up here, and then what we call that back there, if you want to sound very smart, is the gallery organ. I'm going to play something for you by a Swiss-Canadian composer, Victor Tonyi, and this is movement 4 and 5 from his 5 liturgical inventions. So these are modern organ works that sit in a very different world from those French Romantic toccatas that I just played. They're more contemplative, text-driven, and liturgically rooted. These pieces are part of Tonyi's effort to write organ music that feels usable within worship and is not just concert material, while still being structurally interesting and harmonically modern. So Tonyi only lived 30 years, but this piece is really, really cool. The first movement feels like a prayer, and then the Alleluia, which is the last movement of this set, feels like a release, closer to a festive postlude, but it's still more restrained than some of those other toccatas. So we have Laudate Dominum and then Alleluia. I'm going up a memory level. I've used my bank, so now I have to go up. Thank you. That's a really fun one. I like that one. I'm going to do two more. So the first one is an excerpt from William Bolcom, an American composer who was born in 1938. He wrote this complete set of gospel preludes, and he takes idioms from the jazz world, from the gospel world, from the classical world, and he puts them all together in this piece. So I'm going to play just a very short excerpt of Amazing Grace by William Bolcom. And then I'm going to end with John Rutter, who's an English composer who wrote prolific choral music, but also really great organ music. And it's another toccata, and it's a toccata in 7, which means that it's in the time signature of 7/8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it feels a little bit off kilter the whole time, which is actually really, really fun. So those are going to be the last two of the afternoon, and I am really, really grateful that you are all here and have been here for this. We're going to have a little reception in the fellowship room afterwards that the worship and music team has so lovingly put together. So we really hope that you can join us over there. Thank you for coming, and enjoy these last two pieces. really appreciate you all coming out on this gorgeous day and coming inside, actually, for this. So thank you very, very much. Keep in touch with us. Check out our website, check out Facebook, Instagram, and see when our next concerts are. We have some really exciting stuff coming in the fall. One of them is actually, we're going to start a Broadway and Summit series, so stay tuned for that. And some of my Broadway friends will come and sing and do some stuff here too. So keep an eye on that. But otherwise, thank you so very much, and please come to the fellowship room. Thank you.